All right. Time to get those ears ready for a deep dive into something pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
We're talking about German today, but
Okay.
not just like how to say hello or ask where the train station is.
Right.
We're going deeper
Much deeper.
into the language of like really meaning it. Like
Yeah.
stop that right now kind of German.
I am intrigued.
You sent over this audio clip and some analysis, and honestly, it's way more fascinating than I expected.
It's amazing how much emotion can be packed into just a few words.
Right.
It's like those archaeologists who can reconstruct an entire ancient vase
Oh, wow.
just from a few broken pieces.
Yeah.
We're kind of doing the same thing here, piecing together the why and the how behind these German commands.
Okay, so to get us started, why don't we take a listen to this audio clip you sent?
Yeah, let's hear it. Audio clip plays cold Tekk, hurt off 155 BPM Tekk test, Holtzy zip D Ishi double volume.m4a.
Okay, wow. That was pretty direct.
Yeah,
I think I felt that all the way over here.
vehement business for sure.
Yeah. So what's actually happening in this clip, like from a language point of view?
Well, the main message is clear. The speaker wants something to stop, and they want it to stop now.
Yeah.
They're using hurt off, which means stop it.
Okay.
And they repeat it several times,
Right.
which already ramps up the intensity. And then there's the phrase, was sold die Schieße.
Okay, I'm guessing that's not exactly polite.
Not really, no. A very rough translation would be, what is this?
Yeah.
But with a lot more heat behind it.
Yeah, that definitely has a different feeling to it than saying like, oh, excuse me, I think that's quite enough.
Definitely. It's less of a polite request and more of a direct order.
So we're dealing with a command here, not a gentle suggestion at all.
Exactly. Linguistically, hurt off uses what's called the imperative mood.
The imperative mood.
Yeah, it's basically the language of commands. The speaker isn't asking, they are telling.
Gotcha.
And adding schieß into the mix, well, that tells us this isn't just mild annoyance.
Right.
We're dealing with some genuine frustration here.
It's a pretty strong swear word. But...
It is, yeah.
So how does that word scheiß fit into the bigger picture of German culture?
It's a good question.
Like, is this something you'd hear on the streets of Berlin every day?
It depends. It's all about context.
Okay.
While that kind of language might be considered extremely rude in some cultures,
Right.
it's a bit less taboo in casual German conversations.
Interesting.
Think of it this way. German communication tends to be more direct, even when dealing with negative emotions.
So it's less about trying to avoid offense and more about just getting the point across.
Exactly. They're not afraid to use strong language to make sure they're heard.
So while in English, we might try to soften the blow with a, would you mind terribly? In German, it's more like, cut it out.
Exactly. And the repetition of hurt out just adds to that urgency and frustration.
It's like when someone starts banging their fist on the table to make sure you get the point.
Exactly.
It definitely adds to the drama of it all.
It does.
And we've only had the audio, of course. But I'm picturing some pretty animated hand gestures happening just off screen.
Yeah, you're right to point that out. We're missing those visual cues here.
Right.
We don't know if the speaker is red in the face.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're delivering all of this with a sarcastic smile.
That would definitely change things.
Right. All those nonverbal cues add layers of meaning that we just don't get from the audio alone.
Okay, so we've got this very intense command.
Yeah.
A swear word that might not be as taboo as it seems at first.
Right.
And a whole lot of missing visual information.
Yeah.
Where do we even go from here? How do we even begin to understand how this audio clip would make the listener feel?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it brings us to the idea of relationships and power dynamics, which is something we can unpack in just a bit.
So we've got this very intense command.
Yeah.
A swear word that might not be as taboo as it seems at first.
Right.
And a whole lot of missing visual information. Where do we even go from here? How do we even begin to understand how this audio clip would make the listener feel?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it brings us to the idea of like relationships and power dynamics.
Okay.
Like imagine if your best friend said this to you versus, say, your boss.
Oh, yeah. Huge difference.
Well-
Like if my friend was yelling "hort off" at me, I'd probably be like, okay, I'll stop doing whatever's bugging them.
Right.
But if it was my boss, oh man, I'd be terrified.
Exactly. The relationship between the speaker and the listener is huge.
Totally.
And this is where cultural context comes in again.
Okay.
In some cultures, direct commands are more common, even in like professional settings.
Right.
But in others, that kind of directness might come across as really disrespectful.
Especially from someone who's supposed to be below you in the hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly.
So even without knowing the exact relationship between the people in the audio,
Right.
we can still say that the speaker is definitely trying to take control of the situation.
I think that's a safe bet.
They're basically saying, this is not okay, and you need to stop it right now.
Yes. And using strong language, even if it's not as taboo in some German contexts, really emphasizes that.
It's like they're drawing a line in the sand with their words.
Yeah. Like this far and no further.
It makes me think about that idea of, what's it called, linguistic etiquette?
Yes, the unspoken rules about what you can and can't say in different situations.
Right. And those rules are definitely not the same everywhere.
Not even close. What might be a gentle nudge in one language could be a total insult in another.
That's so wild when you think about it.
It is. It's a great example of how language reflects these deeper cultural norms.
So we're all kind of navigating these linguistic minefields every day, even if we don't realize it.
Exactly.
Well, let's bring it back to the audio clip for a sec.
Okay.
Even though it's super short,
Yeah.
it feels like there's this whole backstory that we're missing.
Definitely.
Like, what happened in the minutes before the recording started? What led to this outburst?
That's a really important point, the power of what isn't said.
Right.
We're only hearing this tiny fragment of a larger conversation.
Yeah,
This audio clip leaves us with more questions than answers.
for sure.
Like, what if the speaker had been trying to get the listener to stop for a really long time, and this was just the last straw?
Totally.
Maybe they're usually very patient, and this outburst is totally out of character for them.
Right, we just don't know.
Exactly.
It's like listening in on one side of a phone call.
Yes.
You're just getting this little sliver of the story.
Right.
And you're left wondering what the other person is thinking and saying.
Yes.
It really makes you think about how much we depend on all those nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking to someone face to face, we use facial expressions, tone of voice,
Right.
all that stuff to understand the full message.
We do. It's like we have these subtitles turned on in our brains.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize it most of the time.
It's so automatic.
Totally. And it's something to be really mindful of,
Oh, definitely.
especially when we're dealing with different cultures and languages.
Yeah, absolutely.
A phrase that seems totally harmless in one context could land completely wrong in another.
100%.
It reminds me of that time I was...
Huh.
Never mind. Not important for right now, but it's a good reminder to check our own cultural biases too.
Yeah, for sure.
What we might think is rude or polite, direct or indirect.
It all comes from our own backgrounds.
Right. It's shaped by where we grew up, the languages we speak, all of it.
It's true. We all have these internal dictionaries in a way.
Yeah, I like that.
And they're filled with our own personal interpretations of language and what we think is appropriate in different situations.
Absolutely. But that's part of what makes exploring different cultures so fascinating.
It is.
It challenges us to look at those biases
Right.
and to really try to understand how other people communicate.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into German commands, what's the main thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
That language is so much more than just words.
Okay, I like that.
It's this incredibly complex system
Right.
that reflects our emotions, our relationships, our cultural values. It's all intertwined.
I love that. It's about understanding the bigger picture.
Exactly. And the more we learn about how language works,
Yeah.
the better we can communicate with each other.
Right.
Bridge those cultural gaps
Yeah.
and hopefully avoid a few misunderstandings along the way.
Well said. We've gone over a lot today.
We did.
The imperative mood, those cultural nuances around swear words, and even how much we rely on those nonverbal cues.
So much good stuff.
It's amazing what we can uncover from just a few seconds of audio.
I know, right?
It shows that every interaction,
Yeah.
even a short one, can be a chance to learn something new.
It's true, especially when it comes to language.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the next time you hear someone tell you to stop doing something,
Okay.
whether it's stop it or even hoard off,
I love it.
take a second to really think about what's going on beneath the surface.
Oh, that's good.
What's the context?
Yeah.
What's the relationship between those people?
Yeah.
And What are the cultural rules that might be at play?
It's like detective work.
It is. And you might be surprised by what you find.
For sure. And who knows?
Yeah.
You might even learn something about your own way of communicating in the process.
I love that. Well, that's all we have time for on today's deep dive.
This was fun.
Until next time, happy listening.